Welcome back to the Midlife by Design podcast. I'm your host, Lori Lisai, and I am a human design teacher and alignment coach, here to help midlife women use human design to shed others' expectations and be who you came here to be. In today's episode, Amanda Gaitaud of 1-3 Reflector joins us. Amanda is entering midlife, and understanding health and well-being has been a central theme in her life. Her quest for wellness inspired her career in acupuncture and Chinese medicine, profoundly shaping her perspective on life and health through a blend of study and experiences. Embracing her sensitivity and unique nature while navigating the twists and turns of life has revealed to her how deeply empowered we all are by our human design. We hope that her story can inspire and support you along your own journey. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to Midlife by Design. I'm so excited today to have with me Amanda Gaitaud, who is a reflector. Yes, you heard that right. Just one tiny percent of the population. And I'm so glad I found her and that she agreed to come on and tell us a little bit about her lived experience. So welcome, Amanda. And can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So I just turned 40, so I'm just entering my midlife era, and I've been a licensed acupuncturist for the last 15 years. And I also have a doctorate in Chinese medicine, which is kind of an integrative medicine approach to acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And I also have training doing research in Chinese medicine and acupuncture as well, which as a 1-3 is definitely, it makes a lot of sense that I followed that path.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. And of course, I have a bajillion questions, and we'll probably have to have you on another time to talk about all of the things that you've studied. But I am curious about the reflector part of you. And since you are just 1% of the population, have you always kind of felt different?
So in a way, yes, and then in a way, like not so much, but I think it's less about how I felt and more about the patterns that I observed. So I noticed that life just didn't work the same way for me that it did for other people. And I also, because I was so attuned to other people, I would feel kind of like I was on the same level as them, but then I would kind of move and into a different environment and be around different people. And I would notice how much I would change, as my environment changed. And so I did notice a lot of differences, but then because I kind of sensed so many different things about different people, I also noticed how like everyone's really different from each other.
Yeah. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about this experience of witnessing other people's journeys. How has that been for you?
Yeah. So I think, a big part was really noticing different ways that people felt like empowered and really themselves, or if something felt like off about people, I would just kind of pick up all these nuances, different struggles that people would have. And so I think that I started to observe different patterns in people. And then when I found human design, it really made a lot of sense, like the kinds of things that I would pick up from people and why, people would have certain struggles and other people would just kind of things would work more easily for them in certain ways. And so I think it really brought me that perspective of how, all the different things that I picked up from people. And I also have found that really being attuned to like how healthy an environment is and really how healthy, or I don't want to say like necessarily unhealthy, but it could be various levels of unhealthiness or just offness where people don't feel really aligned in their lives or in different ways that they're struggling with aspects of their health or well-being. I would start to really pick all that up and just piece together how unique everybody's needs really are.
Yeah. This leads me to my next question in terms of your work as an acupuncturist. How do you think being a reflector has helped you in that line of work?
Yeah, so I think that it's a combination of apply all the knowledge that I've gained through my training, as well as seeing, so many people through this journey of using different tools to help them with different ailments, different concerns that they have. And so that combination of my training and my experience combined with my reflector essence, where I call it like tunnel vision. Like when I work with someone, I start to kind of just get so attuned to what they're sharing with me. And then part of what we do as an acupuncturist too is where there's a lot of observation. So as people are telling me what they've been feeling and what their symptoms are, and they're expressing what they're experiencing subjectively, I'm also picking up a lot of different things that their body's giving off, different signs that are observable, like looking at their skin and their hair and, their eyes and all of these different things that we examine. But then there's also just something else. It's kind of like what they're not able to say, or just those little subtleties. And so I think that as a reflector, I'm able to bring that attunement. But then I also think that there's this other piece of having a different perspective. And one of the pieces of feedback that I get a lot from my patients is a lot of people tell me they feel really seen by me. And I feel like I'm able to pick up maybe a lot of things that other people haven't picked up. But then that is also part of why I love acupuncture and Chinese medicine, is because it brings in so much detail into the kinds of things that we're looking for. And so I feel really empowered by my training with my natural tendencies as a reflector. But then I also have this different perspective where I'm really able to see things from multiple perspectives. And so I'm able to get a sense of where that person is, how they think, or what's going on for them, and to be able to explain everything in a way that makes sense for them. And so that's something that a lot of people tell me, is that I've explained things in a way that it just kind of clicks for them, or I'm able to kind of find the thing that matters in that moment. Because when it comes to health and well-being, there's so many different directions that we can go in, and that can also get really overwhelming. And so I'm able to get a sense of, well, what really matters right now, because we often can't do everything at once, but we need that starting point, that I call it like the intervention point, where it's like, what's that one thing that's going to change where you are right now to shift this pattern? So I feel like just my nature, and in combination with all of that, I'm able to bring that to people.
That's incredible. It sounds like you've been able to really use it as your superpower, which is such a beautiful gift to be able to bring to the practice, and definitely for your patients. So on the flip side, I'm curious about the challenges that being a reflector has presented to you and how you navigate them.
Yeah. So I'll kind of start backwards. So like my challenges now at this point in my life, like with work, for example, I definitely can't work alone. So that's something I figured out early in my career when I tried to like rent a little office. Like I just felt really off. It was so challenging. And so over the last 15 years, I've worked in a few different environments and really seen how different I feel and how well I'm able to work in different environments, depending on who I'm around, the kinds of practitioners I'm around, as well as how cohesive we are, like as a team. And so for the last 8 years, I've co-owned a clinic with somebody who is just incredible. She's had this amazing vision, and we really have more of that team atmosphere. And we work so cohesively together that it really impacts me and empowers me to be able to do what I do. But I know that if I couldn't go to a different clinic or a different environment and do what I'm doing where I'm doing it, so not that I couldn't move somewhere else and also have my gifts that are supported or anything, but I've just seen a big difference depending on who I'm working with. So that's really important. The environment that I'm in and who I'm around. And then other challenges that I've had, of course, have to do with the inconsistency, really feeling different day to day. And when you work on appointments, it's really challenging, because sometimes I'm like so in the groove and in the flow with what I'm doing. And then other days, it's like such a challenge So I've been experimenting with like what I call intuitive scheduling, where I try to kind of anticipate when I might need like a little bit more rest, or if I've noticed some patterns like at certain times where might need a little lighter schedule or a day off.
Mm.
But then life throws curveballs and it doesn't always work out that way. And then other challenges really have to do with reflecting and amplifying. I think that's the big thing. And I've noticed, like, since my childhood, my entire life, definitely picking up what's going on with other people. And before I really knew what I was picking up, and that was really amplifying what was going on around me, um, it was so overwhelming. And so that's where human design has been such an empowering tool, has been to help me understand and differentiate when I'm just experiencing something for myself, when I'm picking up something from my environment. And when I experience this like intensity, it's that amplification of all these
Mm.
undefined centers of just, yeah, picking it all up and really having to work through years of experimenting with different practices to support me
Mm.
in coming down from that amplification, because it's very like stimulating and you can feel overstimulated. I've definitely felt like that. And then I think the last challenge that has been so important for me has been the challenges with making decisions. And
Mm. Right.
I first found human design 14 years ago, and there wasn't as many resources back then, at least that I could find. And it was somebody who did some kind of energy work that told me, hey, you should really look into human design because there's something going on for you that,
Wow.
would be supportive. So I looked into it. And when I found that, the description that I read on the Jovian Archive website and the wait the lunar cycle as a strategy, I thought, why do I have to be such a weirdo? Like, how do I work with this? But then at the same time, I was like, I also think I completely understand what this means, because
Mm.
I've noticed I've always had kind of these rhythms. It was really hard for me to make decisions on the fly. I never got that, like what people call the full body yes, or the, I was always like a maybe. Like, I'm like, kind of like, maybe yes, maybe no. I don't really know. And I actually found that sometimes the things where I hesitate more in the beginning, that over time it actually grows on me. So I might initially have a little bit more of a no, but then I give it time. And as I go through the different perspectives that I kind of go through, I kind of come to this place where something might grow on me. And I found that that tends to be where something's more aligned for me, as kind of, even if I have those ups and downs where sometimes like one day it might be a strong yes, and then the next day it's like, actually, I think maybe a no. So it's been interesting working with that, because I kind of always followed that pattern even before I knew about human design. And so it just was a good reminder to me over all these years. And that's for most of my journey, that's really all I did, was just kind of allowed myself to wait. And when I found that pressure to make decisions, I just reminded myself that I'm not meant to know right away what's right for me.
Mm.
And I'm meant to move more slowly. And then I also think that as a three line, part of my journey has been making mistakes. So I have made some impulsive decisions. I just recently did a cover up tattoo of one of those impulsive decisions when I was like 19. And, so there were these things where I kind of didn't wait, or I kind of jumped in, or I felt strongly about something. So I went with that. But then a week later, I was like, what was I thinking? But then I look back and I see how I was meant to kind of learn through my failures. And
Mm.
so I almost look at some of those challenges as I was meant to really experience them to the depths that I did, for me to understand what it's like to not trust yourself, to allow yourself to kind of act on these impulses when you know that that's not really how you work. Even before I knew human design, I knew that. So I think that those are the biggest challenges.
That's great. And yeah, you can't be a human without challenges, right?
Yes, exactly.
There are a couple of follow-up questions I had because there was so much gold in that answer. I want to circle back to the intuitive scheduling idea that you have sort of formed for yourself. And I'm just curious if you could maybe give an example or some kind of context for what does that actually look like?
Yeah, so I do want to say that I have the quad left. And so
Yes.
this might there might be some unique things about me that this might not be relevant to like every reflector,
Yes.
but I'm very strategic. And so I definitely pick up patterns, and I've noticed I do kind of go through these like crash and burn cycles when I do a lot and then I kind of crash. And so I try and catch myself before I start feeling that where I'm going sinking and going down, because once it starts, I just can't stop it. And I named it this crash and burn cycle, inspired by the manifestors' rest cycles because of the
Yeah.
amplification of amplified the energy. But then also, I feel like the rest is more of a crash, and it's like that's amplified as well. So, the intuitive scheduling, the way that I've been experimenting with it to the best that I can, is sensing like what days of the week do I get more tired? So I definitely noticed that, Monday and Tuesday are a little better because I had the weekend alone or to do whatever, my own time, sleep in, all the things. I've been trying to really take that into account and then recognize that towards the end of the week, I need a lighter schedule or even a day off. And so sometimes there's things out of my control going on in the clinic where I have to work when I really need the day off or I need a much lighter schedule. But just trying to schedule like different amounts of work at different days is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go through periods because I've been doing this for about a year where I've also had like more of a consistent schedule, but like a lot shorter. And
Mm-hmm.
so I kind of sense like, do I have it in me to do a longer day, but then like the rest of the week is a lot lighter? Or is it that I just need a shorter day every day of the week and just allowing myself to make the changes? And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of get this sense of what's coming. But my one of my challenges is also that people tend to book out like months in advance as well. So I kind of have to have it pre-programmed the best that I can, just for those people who do need to schedule further out. I also know that when I do a lot, like if I go to an event on a weekend or I'm doing things around people, that I'm going to probably need at least a weekend completely to myself.
Thank you so much for explaining that, and thank you for also making the point about the quad left. So if you're new to human design, what Amanda is talking about is at the top of your chart, if those arrows, all four of them are pointing to the left, then that means you're a quad left, and that's very strategic energy. So great explanation. And I love that you have been able to observe enough of yourself and the way that your own energy functions to know those things about yourself so that you can support yourself. You also mentioned overstimulation because you're taking on and amplifying other people's energy in all of your centers, and you alluded to some practices that you use to help you kind of let go of that energy and ground down into your own. So I'm curious if you could just talk a little bit about what those are.
Yeah. Well, so my favorite strategy currently is that my husband and I have a hot tub. And so we both
Ah.
we both have a completely open route. So what I found is that we both really need that like physical relaxation. So we've had a hot tub for the last couple of years, and when I feel that overstimulation in my body and I feel that really wired and tired feeling, like I go through like a 20-minute cycle in the hot tub. I run the jets, I'm in the heat, and I feel like it just does something to my system. And I've heard other people explain this water relationship to this like this feeling like you're almost cleansing your aura. It's like this electromagnetic shift that you go through. So I feel like actually being submerged in water, relaxing in the heat with the jets, it just makes such a big difference. So that's currently like one of my practices that is a game changer. And I recognize, not everybody has access to that. And it definitely took a long time to get to the point to be able to have that. But even like hot baths, Epsom soap
Right.
baths are always really helpful. So like physical practices is like number one. Carving out time to just do nothing is really important. And it's interesting because I've experienced so much in my life where people give me like unsolicited advice that is like really bad for me. And I
Okay.
know they're coming from a place of wanting to help, but it's just so funny how it's like always the wrong advice. So like recently I went through quite a bit of stress and I was telling somebody that I was planning on this day of like doing nothing. And they were like, no, you really should work out and, exercise and do all this stuff. And that helps with stress. I'm like, not me. It really
Mm.
will worsen my stress. And I've noticed that my sleep is so much better if I've done nothing. Well, then if I've like exercised and exerted myself and did all this stuff, like, so the overstimulation definitely affects my sleep quality, my ability to sleep at all. And so carving out enough time when I catch myself not sleeping well, that's when I know I've been overstimulated. Do my hot tub routine, carve out alone time. And sometimes it's a significant amount of alone time, like a day or a couple days to even start to really decompress. It's not just like a couple hours here and there. I also use a lot of holistic practices. I'm an acupuncturist, so acu works through your nervous system. And so it's been such an important tool for me to be able to reduce the effects of overstimulation, like on a more physiological level, like reducing inflammation,
Mm.
supporting nervous system regulation, regulating different types of pain, and all those different things. So acupuncture has been a really important modality. And, then there's also like soundboarding. So having people in my life where I can soundboard to, and then also a lot of journaling, I think is really key as well.
Wow, those are fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing all of those. And I think that it's probably true that a lot of those practices are good, whether you're a reflector or not. But I think that the more open or undefined energy centers you have, right, and the more that you're
Mhm.
taking in other people's energy and amplifying, those are great ideas for ways to just cleanse that. And, if you don't have a hot tub, you can hop in the shower, right? A
Yeah,
hot tub is
exactly.
is lovely, but there are other ways around things like that, and totally agree on the power of water to literally cleanse your aura. It's a great reset tool if you're feeling out of sorts to just hop in the shower or, in your case, the hot tub, which is a
Yes.
lovely thing.
Yeah, the shower does it too.
It does,
Definitely.
right? It may not be quite as beautiful, but the other point that I wanted to circle back around to was the authority piece. And I kind of look at reflector authorities like emotional authorities on steroids. It's like you take it to the nth level in terms of coming to a decision. And I love the phrasing that you used, that it grows on you
Mm.
and that you don't necessarily completely discount something if it's a no at some point along your path, but that you allow that space for things to grow on you. And you definitely can't make this blanket statement for everybody. However, I do think that this idea of things growing on you is a lovely way to kind of case that and give yourself just more permission to let things unfold.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for that as well. I want to come back to your profile because you mentioned that a couple of times in just that 1-3. And if you're new to human design, that one line is about research and deep dives and this seemingly never ending need for knowledge. And then the 3 is that same sort of need, but it's instead of research, it's about experimenting and trying things and seeing how they work and throwing spaghetti at the wall. And so you, as this 1-3, have this beautiful combination. And I just love talking to people because human design is so interesting to me. And I think it's fascinating that you have this profile as a reflector, the 1-3. So I'm curious how knowing that is your profile, the 1-3, how has it helped you navigate as you get older?
Yeah, the 1-3 profile, when I got deeper into human design and I discovered the profile, it helped me even more than learning I was a reflector. Because a reflector, I was like, well, that explains my life. But the 1-3 really showed me more about like different ways that I am the way I am and my need to understand something.
Yeah.
And I'll get these burning questions where I just can't put it down. And so what I've learned is that when I get that burning question that I just can't put away, that I'm actually meant to pursue it. Like, it's not like it's necessarily just satisfying something I'm insecure about, or it's literally like it feels like I'm like a hunting dog that caught a scent. It's like, and I have to follow it. And when I've followed my really crazy burning questions, it totally leads me to that surprise. And so I feel like it's so integrated with my alignment as a reflector and just being the best version of me and the most empowered version of me. Like when I was a kid, I was so obsessed with the library and with books that I wanted all of the books that we had in my house in my bedroom. I wanted my room like basically decorated like a library.
Oh my gosh.
And I would just pick up the encyclopedia and want to like read different parts of the encyclopedias. And I still remember reading all about sleep and the sleep rhythms when I was in elementary school out of the encyclopedia. Like I just wanted to learn so many different things. So it's interesting, like when I look at those patterns when I was a child, and then now looking at this burning question and how when I actually look back at the kinds of things that I would get that burning question about, I can see how there's certain themes. And so that kind of helped me start to understand, especially with my interest in health and wellness and some other things that I'm interested in, seeing how they're all really connected through this like pursuit. And there's certain things that sometimes I'm really not interested in researching. And so that shows me it's just not where I'm meant to go. And so for me, that's a really big cue is like, when I just can't stop thinking about something and I have to pursue it, that there's really something there. And with the 3 line, it's like I can't really trust that information until I've seen it in action. It's kind of how I've experienced that. So with acupuncture, for example, it's a minimum of like 4 years of school. There's a lot of training that goes into it. But even then, when I got my license, I still felt really uncomfortable practicing, even though I had thousands of hours of supervised experience, as a student. I still didn't feel like I knew enough or that I had enough experience. And so when I was able to work in an environment where I saw a lot of patients and I worked with somebody who was really experienced and served as like a mentor to me, it was able to empower that 1-3 need for like going even deeper with my knowledge, but then also seeing it really play out in a lot of people. And then that's also definitely impacted me personally. I have to do the same thing in my own life where I have to research and then have to try it out. And I think the most empowering thing of all with learning about my profile is that I'm here to make mistakes. And that was definitely one of the things that I would kind of be hard on myself a lot throughout my life was all the mistakes I would make. And especially there's that 1-line feeling of maybe I didn't know enough, or it would sometimes play a role in being hard on myself about mistakes. But I feel like human design has really helped me make peace with a lot of the mistakes that I've made and just recognize that every time there's a mistake, there's a huge lesson. There was something I was meant to learn through that.
Right, right. I'm really glad you said that. I know a lot of the 1-3s I talk to in sessions have had very similar experiences in terms of that heaviness around failure. It's almost there's some shame, I think, that they carry, like, why couldn't I figure it out? Or I did all this research and it was still the wrong way to go or whatever. And I think if you can remember that piece about the lesson and being willing to look for the gold nuggets, that's your saving grace, essentially. And when you were talking about how deeply you research things and then not trusting them until you actually see it in action, it just made me think like every person online writing reviews should be a 1-3 profile. Like those are the people you can trust, right? So I'm curious about the Chinese medicine piece, and like I said, I'll probably have you come back just so we can dive really deeply into that. But I just wanted to ask you about some of the parallels that you see between human design that you feel would be most helpful to share.
So I think there's really 2 pieces that are the most important. And the first one has to do with the I Ching. And so the I Ching plays a huge role in human design, which I didn't know about when I first found human design. And then when I came back to it, I discovered that that's when it really started to click how much human design actually related to certain components of Chinese medicine, because the Chinese I Ching is about the science of yin and yang. And it's a way of looking at the world, at nature, through these different elements and combinations of yin and yang. And yin and yang are essentially looking at like night and day, is kind of like a really simple way to look at it. And I work with women's health, and so it applies with the body in terms of like the menstrual cycle and the menstruating years of, we have ovulation and then the period. You know, we have these two opposing forces just to kind of keep it in an embodied way of looking at it. So we can apply it to kind of these patterns in nature, but then also to the body. What I thought was so cool about human design was how it mapped out the relationship of these elements of yin and yang and how they're constantly in motion and changing, and how they express and manifest physically. So that was piece number one, is that there's a huge relationship because Chinese medicine is really based on the science of yin and yang. The other piece has to do with a concept we call Jing, which is the essence. So in Chinese medicine, we have three treasures, which are what creates life. And so we have the three treasures are what we call Jing, which is like your essence. It's like your DNA. You have Qi, which is kind of like the physical manifestation of our reality. And then we have Shen, which is the role of the mind. And human design really seems to correlate with what I view as Jing in Chinese medicine, the essence. Mm-hmm. And so we have what we call preconception Jing. So it's like your DNA. It's what you inherit from your parents. It's what's imprinted energetically on you at the time and place of your birth. So it does correlate with human design. And it's viewed as this physical force. And it's distributed throughout your lifespan. So it influences development. And it's like the slow drip of vitality throughout the lifespan. And so in Chinese medicine, we have different ways that we understand how Jing is distributed to us throughout our lifespan, and different things that might impact that as we go through life. And so we emphasize different health cultivation practices that slow using that Jing to preserve your health and longevity. And that also emphasize what we call post-conception Jing, which is basically like from a healthy lifestyle, eating the right way for you, exerting yourself in the right way. Not like overwork is actually a cause of disease in Chinese medicine. So there's a lot of other factors, you know, the quality of your mental health. If you're worrying a lot, it can start to kind of consume your energy. So there's a lot of different ways that we might deplete our preconception Jing. And so human design, I really view as this template to help us understand how we can preserve that preconception Jing and move about in life in a way that preserves what we're born with, protects our DNA and what we need to help us through different stages of development throughout the lifespan. And so for me, it's been really huge because I've been through a lot of things where I could really feel that impact, where I used a bit of that preconception Jing going through, like I've been through serious illness, really significant traumas. And so I really felt the impact of how that depleted that particular substance, and then how I actually found elements of human design really supported me preserving what I have, in a sense, and leaning into a lifestyle that is more supportive to my health and well-being going forward, and really seeing that shift over time. So just the impact, you know, looking at how it's helped me sleep better is really key. You know, I have taste cognition and like open taste digestion. And so just even that, like using that with nutrition and realizing that if I get a craving for something, or something really sounds good, that's actually really healthy for me to honor that.
Yeah.
And that denying that is actually really unhealthy. So there's just like a lot of little things that gave me additional clues, combined with Chinese medicine, what I've learned about nutrition and exertion and all of these things through Chinese medicine. That combination has been really, really powerful.
So good. One of the things you mentioned a couple times was overwork.
Yeah.
And I just want to come back to that idea, because what I've noticed, one of the major shifts that women who are getting older
Yeah.
are unfortunately having to often figure out through trial and error, but noticing that they're gaining weight and they're trying really hard. They're overworking, really. They're on the Peloton, they're at CrossFit, and doing all the things that they could have done that worked when they were younger, but they're actually seeing the opposite result.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm curious if you could just speak to that.
So exerting yourself, there's different elements in human design that can impact the right amount and the right type of exertion. And so as a generator, what really will benefit you doing what you like, exercise that you really love, is
Mm-hmm.
going to be key, versus for me, it's like the amount.
Yeah.
And also recognizing that I cannot have a consistent workout schedule. And so it's like, I think really understanding your energetic needs, I think is key. Though I think that the messages that we receive from society, and in the health industry as well, and kind of the medical model, is that there are these guidelines and recommendations that are researched across a whole population.
Mm-hmm.
And so we might look at exercise recommendations or nutrition recommendations, but then there's so many people that follow those recommendations are like, this, it's actually not working for me. I'm developing these health issues, or like I'm gaining weight, or I don't feel well. So it's recognizing, actually, is this working for me or is it not? And recognizing that everyone does have individual needs. So that's where I would start. I think that there's other changes that happen in midlife physiologically that also play a role. And so we do have to change the way that we move through life. I felt a big shift around 35, but I also had an advancement in autoimmune disease. I had these other factors that played a role as well. So it's like hard for me to really pinpoint what's related to the aging process and what's related to this other condition. But I did notice that overexerting myself was a huge factor in my flare-ups with this condition. And so it's all interconnected. I'm aging, I'm getting older. I view it as like my life. My body has more experience in life now, and it's been, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's
And so,
fantastic.
yeah. I think it's really being able to assess the big picture. It's really important for women.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. So, one question I like to ask is, how do you feel like you have begun to be who you came here to be as you're entering into midlife?
I think the biggest thing is that I've learned to trust myself. I think that so much of my life, I experienced a lot of things that made me doubt myself, mistrust myself. Not only the mistakes, but I think that's where I received a lot of conditioning, was around people telling me I was wrong, people telling me what they thought I should do or how I should think or feel or anything. And so learning how to tap into that part of me where I just kind of know things, like I just know myself, or I just have this sense of something, and learning how to trust myself when it might not make sense to other people. And I think that's the thing I'm most excited about going into the decade of my 40s here, is that I'm like, when I entered my 30s, I was probably at one of the worst points in my life of like self-doubt and not trusting myself. But then I went through some things that really forced me to make changes with that and to honor these things that I knew that I needed to do. And I think that ultimately for all of us, that's the role of human design for us. And that's how it can empower us going into midlife. It's that guide of just knowing yourself and trusting yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like if there were maybe a banner for midlife, that would be my hope for everybody to come to that deeply rooted trust in yourself. So thank you so much. I feel like I could talk with you for so much longer, but before we go, can you tell us where we can find you and how people can work with you and just all the things?
Sure. So my work is a local practice. So right now I'm not really doing anything distance. People are welcome to reach out to me on my Instagram. It's my first and last name is my handle, currently. I can't promise it won't change depending on when people listen to this. And I also have it set to private right now, which I kind of turn that on and off every once in a while. So you're welcome to send me a message if you want to connect or if you have questions or something you want to talk about. And I am going to be hopefully launching a blog next year. And so if people want to stay tuned for that, my goal is to really dive into all the things health and wellness that I've learned on my journey and have an outlet for all my deep dives. So I'll probably announce that through my Instagram, when I'm ready.
Oh, I love that idea for you. And feel free to share the link if you decide to move forward with it when it gets up and running, and I'll drop it in the episode notes. And I'll put your Instagram there in case you happen to be on, or, people can reach out to you. So thank you so much for your time. This has been such a great conversation, and I think it'll be super helpful for people to understand at least you as a reflector and some of the, quote, reflector experience. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you, Lori. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you for listening to Midlife by Design today. If you're listening when this episode drops on October 21st, 2024, I invite you to check out the link in the show notes to Wild Women by Design, our wraparound retreat experience. We're running an early bird special through Wednesday, October 23rd at 1:00 p.m. Eastern Time, where if you book a spot, you get a holistic health consult with Dr. Johanna Gaitaud, a full 30-day yoga series with Maggie Thomas, and an oracle reading with yours truly. That's a great deal, and I so encourage you to take advantage of it. If you want to bring a friend to the retreat with you, then you'll both get this deal when you sign up by the end of the month. As for the pod, if this episode of Midlife by Design resonated with you, I would really appreciate it if you'd rate it or share it or review it on Apple Podcasts so that we can help more women find alignment in midlife. And as we wrap up, I'm sending you the strength to let go, joy to fill your days, and the clarity to be who you came here to be.